One of the largest landlords in the world says that rent control shouldn't deter property investment. I'm going to tell you why this landlord is wrong. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's about a mega landlord, one of these super huge corporate landlords who says that, hey, rent control policies, there's no reason why they should deter investment, right? Now, I'm in 100% disagreement, okay? And my personal belief is that, simply put, if rent control policies are in place, they are going to deter the grand majority of investors and the grand majority of developers from wanting to build or rent their properties out, okay? And the reasoning is simple. Yeah, there might be sufficient profit written into the law for this single year in particular, right? But eventually all of these policies fail. All these policies fail, and the end result is that properties become dilapidated and out of shape because landlords can't keep up with the costs associated with repairs, maintenance, utilities, taxes, etc. Okay, so yeah, this landlord is living in a fantasy world where probably a large number of their rent control properties are being subsidized by all of the properties they own that are not rent controlled. Now, tell me how that's going to work for the small landlords or even the small corporate landlords. It's not. It's not. If you're a smaller player who owns a few units, rent control doesn't work for you at all. It only works for multi-billion-dollar corporations who can write off their losses and make up for it with a huge number of units that aren't under rent control. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. So do you believe, like this corporate landlord does, that there's no reason not to invest just because there's rent control policies in place? Do you agree with this landlord or do you agree with me? Okay, now I talk to real landlords, real small mom and pop landlords. I've talked to big landlords as well, ones who own hundreds of units. And believe me, if you own hundreds of units, it is not beneficial for you to be under rent control when you can be not under rent control and be making a lot more money. Now, let's get into this article. I want to see what their logic is behind it, and they kind of explain that as they go through it. So let's get into it. This article is coming from the Financial Times, and it says, rent controls need not deter housing investment, says U.S. mega landlord. Greystar chief says caps should not stop institutional investors funding new homes. So yeah, of course they're talking about institutional investors, right? But when a normal person sees this, right, they make no differentiation between an institutional investor and a guy who owns a single 20-unit apartment building or a guy who owns a couple of duplexes down the street. Okay, they see us all as landlords and they want us all to comply with those same stupid rent control policies. So they are going to say, well, look, this landlord says rent control is okay, so all landlords must agree. No, that's complete garbage. And to me, what this really looks like is it's somebody who says, hey, I've already got mine, so screw all of you who are trying to build your portfolios up, who are trying to increase the number of units you have, and who are trying to get wealthy off of real estate. Screw you. We're already wealthy, so we don't care if all of you have to suffer. But anyway, let's get into the article. Rent controls need not stop big investors from funding new homes, one of the world's largest landlords has said, a stance that goes against the argument of many property investors that price caps worsen housing shortages. You do not have to have the windfall of a year of 14% rent increases in order to have a viable investment product, said Bob Faith, chief executive of Greystar, the $78 billion U.S.-based residential developer and landlord. We operate in a lot of markets around the world where rent control exists. Faith's comments suggest that large investors may have been willing to stomach a more interventionist approach than the one taken by the UK's new Labour government, which has been seeking to win the approval of investors and has emphatically ruled out rent controls. So Obviously, he's targeting this. He's, oh, rent controls aren't a problem. Large investor, you can still develop, but what has actual, not what this guy is saying, what has actual history proven to us? What has developers, large developers included, what have they actually done when rent control policies are in place? They have actually, in actuality, pulled their projects out, greatly reduced the number of units that they are building, greatly reduced the number of units they are renting out, converted as many units as they could to condos. This is what the big investors are doing, okay? I'm not even talking about the small investors here. I'm talking about the big investors. Development is just stifled. It is destroyed. So if that is what the investors are actually doing, why is this person here saying, oh, no, we can still operate in this? Because in my opinion, it's a political move, okay? It's a move saying, hey, we're willing to work with this, just don't hurt us too bad, okay? Because they see the writing on the wall in a lot of these places like New York and, the places that already have rent control policies, and they're like begging just not to make the policies more strict, to continue to allow the operators to operate, continue to allow exceptions to the rent control rules that allow them to make money, because that's what is happening. They're slowly taking those exceptions away. They're slowly making things more strict. They're making the rent control policies worse, and they think that maybe if we pretend like we're on their side, they will sympathize with us and allow us to just, continue the things. No, that's not going to happen. This is war, okay? We need to be at war with the socialist morons who think that rent control is a good idea. And I don't agree for 1 second with this nonsense, okay? No, there is no development for, there is no making a good amount of money for places with rent control. And the worst part about that is, where does affordable housing come from? Okay, we really have to think about, where does the affordable housing, the actual affordable housing, come from? It comes from the smaller players, okay? They buy the buildings when they're older. They buy the smaller buildings. They build the smaller buildings. These are the places where affordable housing naturally occurs. Not from government programs, not from these big investors. The big investors who are building new buildings, they're not the ones who provide affordable housing. So when a small landlord who, like I was saying earlier, like owns a 20-unit building, and that might be the only building that they own, and they're stuck under these rent control policies, well, they would have provided affordable housing before without there being a rent control policy in place. Now, they are attempting to get out of rent control. They're attempting to maybe turn the whole building into condos because they realize that, hey, this policy makes it so that we can't make any money. So rather than saying this nonsense, right? Rather than sitting there and trying to pretend as though rent control isn't a bad thing, we need to shove reality down their throats. We need to be like, hey, this is why our expenses are increasing. This is why we need a 14% rent increase, and that merely 3% that you're offering isn't nearly enough, okay? And yes, we do deserve to make a profit. And if you don't believe we deserve to make a profit, we do not have to invest 1 penny here in your city. So what do you think? Do you agree with this large corporate landlord? Or do you agree with me? I'm just curious. Put a comment in the comments section down below.